Good afternoon, dear learners. I hope I am audible, visible, and my screen is also shared. Could you please acknowledge? Okay. So, welcome, dear learners, to the 10th session on the course of Fundamentals of C. And the topic today that we are going to discuss and learn is functions in C language. My name is Shirish Nagar, and we will begin the session. So all the learners are required to maintain discipline for smooth conductance of the session. All the learners must type in their name with enrollment number and program name to mark their attendance. You can raise your questions after the completion of the session. Try posting irrelevant questions and comments. Okay. Uh, the learning objective for this session is we will cover the following topics, and the first one is introduction to functions in C language, the usage and definition of a function, the types of function, the return value, function calling. So different ways in which the functions can be called, function arguments, certain library functions, and advantages of functions in C language. So these are the topics that we are going to discuss in today's session. So, mathematically speaking, what do we know about functions? We all have studied functions in mathematics. So, what is your perception about functions? What do you know about functions? So, functions perform a particular operation. For example, trigonometric function, or logarithmic functions, or exponential functions. So, these functions produce some output, correct? So, but how do they produce some output? We have to provide some input. Okay, some parameter or some argument. So mathematically, we write functions like y is equal to fx. Is it right? So what is y here? Y is the output. Okay. In case of C, we can call it a return value. Right? We can call it a return value. And what is x? X is input. In case of C language, we can call it parameter. Okay. And or we can call it an argument. What is the name of the function? The name of the function is f. This is the name of the function. So likewise, we can generate many functions. Okay, so but what does this function do? Okay, internally, what does this function do? So that is called the definition of the function. So when it comes to function definition, what is function definition? Function definition is basically what logic the function is performing, or what is the business logic, or what is the operation which the function is performing internally, that we can call it as function definition. Okay, so in case of C language, what are functions? So functions are set of statements which take inputs, perform operations, and produce the output, okay, or produce the result. Or we can say that the operation of the function happens when you call a function. So what do you mean by the term function call? You just mention the name and pass the arguments. As soon as you call the name of the function and pass arguments, the function is said to be called or invoked, right? So why do we need functions? Because it promotes code reusability. Right. You don't have to you don't have to write all the steps that you want to do multiple times. Instead, you write the steps only once in a function and then call the function as much as you want, or like as many times as you want. So by doing that, we don't need to rewrite the code again and again. So this promotes code reusability. Okay. when we look at the declaration of the function, so when we want to declare a function, it is necessary for us to mention the return type. What is return type? Return type is the data type of return value. It is the data type of the return value. Okay. For example, if we want to perform sum of two numbers, or we want to perform addition of two numbers, the sum will be of type integer. If you add two integers, what will be the sum? Sum will also be integer. If you add integer and float, the sum will be float. If you add two float numbers, the sum will again be float. But if you add two integers, the output of the return value will be of type integer. So since both the arguments that we are passing in it, so both the parameters that we are passing in it are comma separated. Okay, so if you are passing more than one arguments, it is necessary to separate them with a comma. So here our function is taking two arguments, because when we want to perform sum, the minimum number that we should have is 2. So sum can be performed between two numbers because it is a binary operation, right? So here we are not mentioning what it will be done internally in the function. We are just declaring that I am going to write a function sum, which will take two parameters a and b of type integers, and will generate a sum that will also be of type integer. So this integer is the return type, or we can say the data type of the return value. And these are the two parameters that we are going to pass as input to that function. What is the name of the function? The name of the function is sum. So sum is the name of the function, right? So this is how we understand about function in C language. Okay. So I believe it is clear till this point. Coming to more about C, more about functions. So we can say that C is a modular programming language. Okay, and when we talk about modules, we can say that C is a functional language, because we can divide the entire functionality of one program into multiple functions. So a program can be defined, or this divided into basic building blocks, which we call it function. And we all have been writing one function since the beginning, and that function is main function, is it? So if so in a program, in a C program, at least there is one main function. If you are not having more than more functions, at least your program should have this main function. And I hope you remember that you are also calling some internal functions for different purpose. For example, printf for printing the output on the screen, scanf for taking the input from the screen. So all these are again functions, right? So you must have also noticed that in printf and scanf we pass certain arguments, and they are separated by comma. For example, one argument is format specifier. And then what is the second argument? Second argument is the variable in which we are going to store that value. So if you notice, the scanf function looks like this. So if you talk about scanf function takes two arguments. First is the format specifier written in quote marks, and second is the address of the variable in which the value has to be stored. Right or not? So so in the functions we pass multiple arguments which are comma separated. So, what do you think? If you want to take input from the screen, do you have to write the scanning code multiple times, or you just call this function scanf? So you just call the function scanf. So if you want to take like input from the user five times you will call scanf. If you want to display values on the screen five times you will call printf. Correct? So function can be called multiple times. Okay. And this provides reusability, because the logic which is written in scanf, you don't have to write over and over again. The logic which is written inside printf, you don't have to write over and over again. Instead, it is better to call the function. How do you call the function? write the name of the function and pass arguments in it and put here semicolon. That's it. So we can say that a program is nothing but a collection of functions. Okay. So in different languages, in different books, in different references, documents, we call function as procedures. Okay. We can call them as subroutines. In case of system programs, we prefer to call functions as subroutines. Okay. In some other languages, we call function as procedures. Like in Java, there are certain functions which perform operations, specific operations. They are known as procedures. Okay. Or they are also known as macros. Okay. So depending upon how that function is employed in different context and in different programming languages, function is known by different names. Procedures, subroutines, macros, these are names of the same thing. Okay, so what is function? Function can be defined as a block of code which only runs when it is called. So it is necessary to call a function. If you want to incorporate the functionality written inside function, you have to make a call to that function. So one who calls the function is called caller. So one function can call another function. That is acceptable. Okay. So the function which makes a call is called caller. And the function which is called callee. Right. So there are caller functions, there are callee functions. Okay. So in order to call a function, what is necessary? To pass data. And that data is called parameters. Okay. Functions can perform different actions. Okay. So we write the code once, define the code once, and use it multiple times. This is the objective of writing functions. So I am repeating the same thing, that we avoid rewriting the same logic again and again. Okay, we can call functions as many number of times in a program from different places in the program. So if you must have noticed inside main function, from different places we are calling printf. After second or third line, we write printf. Even at the beginning, we can write printf. At the last, we can write printf. Somewhere in the middle, we can call printf two times. So doesn't matter from where we are calling the function. Okay, function can be called from anywhere in the program, but we should ensure that the code is reachable. Means the function can be called. So if it can be called, you just have to write the name of the function, pass arguments, and you can call it. Okay. So it is easier for us to debug and track the program, because if there is a problem in the program due to a function, we don't have to edit multiple lines. Will just go to the body of the function, make some amendments, and then the code will run perfectly. So it is easy for a debugger or a tester to track a program when multiple functions are involved. Okay. And so according to our requirement, we can divide the program into different functions. Okay. But this division should be logical. Okay. It is not like that you write 10 lines in one function, 2 lines in one function, or depending upon the requirement, you have to decide. Okay. So how to define a function? So far we have understood about function declaration. So what is declaration? In declaration, what do we mention? We mention the return value, the return type. What is return type? Return type is the data type of the return value. Then we write function name. Okay. And then we put a pair of round brackets. And in this, we write multiple parameters, comma separated. So parameter 1, parameter 2, and multiple parameters. And then we put a semicolon. Semicolon shows that I'm not writing function body here. I will define the function later in the program. So function definition follows function declaration. So it is necessary to declare a function and then to define the function. So what is function definition? Inside function definition, most of the things remain same. First is return type remains same. List of parameters remain same. But instead of and function name uh, stays same. What changes is we start putting curly braces. And in this curly brace, we write the function body. Okay, you can refer to this 3 lines written here. First is return type. Okay, then we write the name of the function. Then in the parenthesis, we mention the parameter list, which is separated by comma. Okay. And then instead of putting semicolon, which we used to do in function declaration, now it is time to write the body of the function, means the operation which is supposed to be performed when the function is called. That is called function body. Okay. So function body is a collection of different statements which dictates what the function will do in the code, or what function will do when it is called. So for example, if your function is for performing sum, then inside this body, you will perform that sum. How you will perform that sum? You will declare some variable like sum, and then sum is equal to parameter 1 plus parameter 2, and then you will return that sum value. Okay, so the return type is integer. So if the return type is integer, it matches with the return type of the sum, because sum is an integer variable. So since sum is an integer variable, it is returning the return type as integer. What about the types of parameter 1 and parameter 2? They are also type integer. So int p1 and int p2. Right. So what are the different parts of a function definition? First is function name. Okay, what is a function name? Function name is the name of the function, and it is according to the identifier. Right. So the name of the function should also follow that identifier rules, which we used to have in place of variables. So the name and the parameter of the function will constitute a function signature. So what is function signature? This entire thing, return type, function name, and a list of parameters. These are all called as method signature or function signature. Okay. So function is also known as method. In Java, we call function as methods. So there are multiple names of functions. Okay, the next is function body. I have already told you what is written inside the curly braces block is called the function body. Means it will whatever steps or whatever statements you want the function to execute when the function gets called has to be mentioned inside the function body. What are parameters? Parameters are inputs which we provide or to the function to work. We can also call it as an argument. So parameters are of two types. First is formal parameters and actual parameters. So formal parameters are the parameters which we give at the time of function declaration or function definition. So during function definition, whatever parameters we provide are known as formal parameters. Actual parameters are those when we use to call the function. For example, you have created a function like, let's say, int sum. Okay, and in this sum, you have created two variables, int a and int b. So these are known as formal parameters. Okay, and in this body, you have written int c. This is a method level variable or function level variable. So what you are doing with c, c is equal to a plus b, and then you are will return the sum. So this is function definition. But when you will call this function, how will you call the function? You have to write the name of the function and then pass the arguments, which two numbers you want to add. For example, you want to add 2 and 3. So this is called function call. This is how you call the function. So when you are calling the function, these are called actual arguments or actual parameters. But when you define the function, they are known as formal parameters. Okay, they are known as formal parameters. So when the function gets called, actual arguments or actual parameters get converted into the formal parameters. Okay, and then this value is returned here. So you will have a integer value waiting here, which you can store it in some variable and print it. right? So this is how the parameters are provided. They function can contain, it can also happen that function does not have any parameter. For example, in main function, do you remember passing any parameter? In main function, you have a return type, but you don't have any argument which you are passing in it. So we normally write int main. Okay. So in int, if you look at int main, int is the return type. Okay. Main is the name of the function, but the list of parameter is empty. List of parameter is empty. So parameter, it does not have any parameter list. So it can also be possible that your function has got zero arguments, no parameters, or no arguments at all. It is also possible. And if the function is not supposed to return anything, that instead of writing integer, we write here void. So void main means your main will not have any return value returned. Okay, it will simply return the control back. So it is at the end, it is not necessary to write return statement if your return type is void. But since here the return type is integer, it is necessary to return an integer value as the last line of the function. So return is a statement which will normally occur as the last line of the function. Okay. So I guess most of this discussion is clear to you, right? So when we talk about the return type is the data type of the return that we get from the function. Okay. So it can, for some functions are capable of performing any operation without getting a return value for it. So as I told you, the return type in that case will be void. So void means no data type associated with the value returned, or we can say that no return value is there. So return type, so when it comes to syntax of the function, so return type, name of the function, argument list, function body, and here we call it a function definition. What about function call? In case of function call, we just write the name of the function and list of arguments. For example, if you talk about function definition, what do we do here? Int sum. Okay, so here we have got return type, name of the function, argument list, let's say int a, int b, right? Then we put curly braces. Then we have got a function body, int c is equal to a plus b, return c. Okay, so this is an example of function definition. What about function call? How will you call the function? Name of the function and list of arguments. So you will write here sum 2 comma 3. So this is the argument list which we are passing here. So this is called function call. What about function declaration? It is same. It is this part is same. Here you will write here int sum, int a, int b. No function body. Just put semicolon. So this is function declaration. So what comes first? Function declaration comes first. Then function definition is done. When you define the function, then you can make a function call. Okay. So I'm talking about the structure of the C program. We have to declare the function, then we have to define the function, and then we can call the function. Okay. So I have already told you what about the function definition. So the function definition contains the return type, the name of the function. If we don't want to pass any argument, in that case, we write here void, or there is nothing, nothing we write. So here there is, since there are no arguments, we will leave the bracket open and close. And I don't put here semicolon because it is not declaration, it is definition. So I have to implement this function by putting curly braces and then mentioning all the statements which I want to execute when the function is called. Okay, so here we have an example for a function maximum, which returns the maximum value out of the two values which we pass in it. So the maximum value out of the two value which we pass on it. So how do we declare the function? So in if you want to declare a function, you will have to write here int max, okay, and then the list of parameter val1 and then comma int val2, right? When it comes to function definition, you will write here the same thing, int max, int val1, int val2, but instead of putting semicolon here, you will put here curly braces. Now, how will you find maximum of two numbers? You will compare them. You will use comparison operators like greater than, less than, equal to. So there, if you compare two numbers, there can be three outputs. Either one number is greater than other number, or smaller, or equal to. So we are just saying that greater than and equal to. So if val1 is greater than val2, so we have created a function level variable called result, which will uh, give the result as the maximum value. So here, if value 1 is greater than value 2, then we can say that the result is value 1. Otherwise, what can happen? There can be two options. Val1 is equal to val2 and val2 or val1 is less than val2. In both the cases, can we say that the maximum value can be written as val2? Yes, because both the numbers are equal. So you can write like any of these two numbers. And if val2 is greater than val1, we will write val2. So why not to write here the result as val2? So val2 will be written as the result if val1 is not greater than val2. So val1 is greater than val2, then the result will be assigned as value 1, val1, else the result will be value 2. So whatever the result come, we will return this result value. And this result value is of type integer, and that is what our function is returning as the return type. So this is return type, this is the name of the function, and this is the list of parameters that we are passing in comma separated. We put curly braces and then we write the body of the function. So this is how the function is syntaxed. Is it clear, this example? So function can be categorized into two types. First is called library functions and the second is called the user defined functions. So what are library functions? Library functions are dictated by the use of a library file or a header file. So first we have to include the header file and then we can use the functions defined in that library file. For example, you always include a header file called stdio.h. If you don't include stdio.h, can you use functions printf, scanf? Is it possible for you? You cannot. Why? Because these are library functions. In which library they are defined? stdio.h. Okay, so it is necessary to include the header file stdio.h and only then you can use these library functions printf and scan. Okay, so they are known as library functions. Apart from that, we can use other functions like, for example, power function we can use. So power function is present in which header file? Math.h. Okay, we can use functions like exp. Okay, we can use trigonometric functions like sine, cos, tan. Okay, so or log function we can use. So all these functions are present in math.h. Right, so these library functions are predefined, means you don't have to write the code of the functions. They are declared inside header files. Okay, header files internally are present as DLL files. So DLL stands for Dynamic Link Libraries. Dynamic Link Libraries. Okay, so header files are basically written as DLL files. In Microsoft and Windows, you can see these DLL files present inside a folder called System32. So inside System32 folder, you can see all the DLL files which Microsoft as an operating system uses. In the same way, the functions like printf and scanf are present in which header file? stdio.h. So it is dynamically linked, means when you compile the code, the translated code gets linked with the code of this header file, and then your program runs, then your program executes. So the linking between your code and the header file is done at the runtime, means just before the execution. Right. So when it comes to user-defined functions, so user-defined functions are created by the user. Like we have created max function or sum function. They are user-defined functions. Okay. So they reduce complexity of the program. So uh, these are the two types of functions. So functions, the if the C programmer is defining the functions for its own work, then it is called user-defined functions, and it optimizes the code because the programmer will obviously want to include the set of statements which it wants to invoke several times and want to reuse them. So obviously, if you are using functions, you are optimizing the code, means you are reducing the number of lines which you write to implement your program. Okay. And when it comes to library functions, you don't have to define the functions. Functions are predefined in the header files. Okay, their declaration and the definition is already present in the header files. You just have to include the header files and you just have to call the function. If you call the function without including that header file, it will give you an error. Okay, it will give you a runtime error. So what is the difference between library and user defined functions? Okay, so C program at least has one function, and which is called the main function. Okay. So main function is the starting point of the program, means whenever your program executes, the program starts executing from the main function. Okay. So at least one function is there. Apart from main function, you can have as many functions as you want. Okay. So in the library function, the code is written in the header file. Uh, you just have to include it at the beginning of the program by writing hash include. So this is called preprocessor. So preprocessor means before the compilation happens, it links up your code with the header file. Okay. And then you can call your function printf scanf. So printf scanf, these are example of library function. Apart from that, there are other functions which you can explore: get ch, okay, get c, put s, get s. All these functions we have already discussed, right? So, and then user defined functions, which we can write. So user defined function is always written by the user. But if you have written many useful functions, you can put them in a library. Okay, so you can also have user defined library. Okay, you can link your previously written libraries with your existing header file. So that makes the C programming languages modular. So C programming functions are divided into three activities. I have already told you. First, you declare the function, then you define the function, and then you call the function. Okay. Function declaration is also known as prototype. What is prototype? Prototype is a blueprint. Blueprint means it will tell the compiler that, okay, now I'm going to write such and such function, which will have this method signature. So method signature will have the return type, name of the function, and data type arguments. So what is return type? The value, the data type of the value which the function will return. And what is function name? Function name is the name given to a function as an identifier. Okay, so hopefully you understand what is function declaration. Function definition. So here, when it comes to the function declaration, you just have to put a semicolon. You just have to put here semicolon. Okay. And then in function definition, you write the body of the function like this. Okay, so this is function definition. It contains a set of statements which we want to perform after the function is called. So when you declare a function, you have to mandatorily define the function. So let's take an example of a function call. So function call, we just have to write the name of the function, pass actual arguments here. So these are actual arguments which link up to formal arguments. Call the function, pass it, and then the function automatically executes. So here, what we are doing is this is declaration. So in declaration, we have mentioned the return type, name of the function, parameter list, semicolon. So this is declaration. This declaration is done above main function. So above main function, you can declare this user defined function. In main function, what we are doing, we are calling the function. Okay, inside main function, we will call the function. So how will we call the function? Let's say we want to add two numbers. So these two numbers are defined, are assigned in the main function. And then here we are calling the function. So this is called function call. Function call takes place because function has been defined below the main function. So below the main function, the function is defined. Okay, so it should have been written like this. Int add. So after this main function is over, we can write our uh, user defined function. So int add, int a, comma, int b. Then let's say int sum is equal to a plus b, and then return sum. Such a code should be written as the function definition. So this is called function definition, which can happen below. Okay, here I am making a function call. Right. So what happens when you run this program? First, compiler will learn about the declaration of the function. Then it will go to the main function, do a function call. And when the function call is done, it will transfer the control to the definition of the function. And it will pass the arguments 10 and 20 as actual arguments. And these actual arguments will be converted into the formal parameters. Okay, so A will behave like 10, A will be assigned as 10, B will be assigned as 20. So A will be 10, B will be 20, sum will be 30. So it will return sum as 30, and here int C will be assigned as 30. So it will print the addition in C is 30. Okay, so that is how it will print the value. So did you understand this example? So this is the function body. Okay. So this is the function body which internally takes place. So you can write this function body above the main function also and below the main function also. That is up to you. Okay. Is it clear? Okay. So a function, it can also happen that function does not return any value. So there can be multiple cases where we don't have any return value. So if we don't have any return value, the return value of this function will be void. For example, I have a function called hello. Okay, or display, let's say. So display void, this function does not return any value. Neither it has got any argument. So it has got a no argument and a no return value. So there is no argument passed in it and neither it returns any value. So in that case, the return value is void and argument list is empty. It is simply printing some message on the screen. So it is also allowed. So there can be a function which does not take any argument and neither it returns any value. So if a function does not return any value, you just have to put void as its return type. And for no arguments, you just have to open and close the round brackets. If you want to return a value, you can write the data type of the function. You have to use the data type of a function. So you can use any primitive data type like character, integer, float, long, any primitive data type you can use. So since I want to return 10 as some value, so I'm using integer as the return type. It is also possible to return a float value, just have to mention the return type as float. Okay. So there can be 4 cases based on arguments and return value. It is possible. A function can have no arguments and no return value. In that case, you will write here void function and parenthesis open and close. What about a function that has no arguments but has a return value? In that case, you can have a primitive data type like integer and has got no arguments. A function that has arguments but no return value. In that case, you will have void name of the function and then you can have some argument passed in it. Okay, that is also acceptable. And a function that has arguments and also has a return value, we have already seen it. For example, int sum, int a, int b. So that satisfies it. Okay, so these are the different ways in which function calls can be done or functions can be defined. So here one example we are dealing with here is a function without argument and without a return value. So this is a main function here. Itself in it, it is a function without argument and return value. Okay, and this is also a sum is also your function which does not take any argument. Internally, it takes the two numbers from the user and it performs its sums. It is not taking any input. So that is also acceptable. Okay. Here we can see a function without argument but with a return value. So this is your function sum. It has got a return value but does not have any arguments. So in that case, the value is taken from the user in the function call itself, and then it is returning the sum here. So the sum is returned back to the caller. So main function here is the caller, and this function is called callee. So this is called a function call. Okay. So this is how you call the function. So how will you call the function? Write the name of the function. No arguments is there. So you just have to put bracket open and close. So it will call the function. Inside function, what you are doing? You are declaring two function level variables, asking the user to enter two numbers, storing those numbers in these variables, and then calculating the sum and returning it. So sum of two integers is integer. So the return value is integer. So here also you will capture the result as integer value. So the function call, whatever value is written by the function call is captured in this variable result, and you are printing the result. So let's say I have passed 10 and 24. So 10 and 24 will be A and B. You are doing here 10 plus 24, that is 34. You are returning this value to the caller, and then you are calculating the sum here. You are printing the sum here. Okay. So this is an example of a function without argument but with return type. So here this is an example of a function with argument but no return type. So in that case, inside the main function, so main function is the caller again. We have got three variables declared here, A, B, and result. So we are going to ask the user to enter two numbers A and B, and then pass these numbers as actual arguments in our function. So inside actual arguments, we are passing it in the function. Note that I'm not returning any value. Whatever will be done by the function. So ball is in the court of the function now. It will never return to the caller. It will not return to the caller because the return type is void. Okay, so it will simply call the function. It will not return any value to the caller. It will only return the control. See, there are two things. First is returning a control, and second is returning a value. So if the return value is there, it is necessary to mention the return type. But if there is no return value, it will simply return control. It will simply return control. So there is no return statement which is to be written at the end. Or if you want to write return, simply write return here and then put semicolon. So in that way, it will not return any value. It will simply return control. Control back to the caller. Okay. So hopefully you have understood this concept of this function having argument but with no return value. Okay. Now this is our previously discussed function with argument and with return value. So here we are asking the user to enter two numbers, and then we are also expecting the function to return a value in form of integer, which we are capturing as result. So this return will actually return a value of type integer back to this integer type variable result. So this is your function call. So inside the function call, we will pass two numbers scanned from the user from the screen, and then they will be passed as actual arguments. Here they will be captured as formal parameters. They will be worked upon, and then it will generate a return value, and it will return the control back to the call. So here you will capture in the same data type. Please note that if you are going to assign the return value to a variable, both should be of same data type. Otherwise, there will be data type mismatch. So to avoid data type mismatch, please understand that result should always be of the same data type as that of the return type. So return type and the value of the variable or the data type of the variable where you will capture the return call should be of the same data type. Otherwise, there will be data type mismatch. Okay, so I have already uh, discussed the two terms, formal parameter and actual parameter. So function arguments, when the function is called, okay. So when the function is invoked or function is called, these are known as actual arguments or actual parameters. And the formal parameters are the variables mentioned in the function declaration and definition. So in the function declaration and the definition, the variables which are mentioned as data type and the data types are known as formal parameters. So here A and B are formal parameters because they are part of the function definition. And these 10 and 30 are the actual values on which the function will perform. Okay, so so 10 and 30 become the actual parameters. Okay, so when we call the function, we write actual arguments, actual parameters, and when we define the function, we use formal parameters. So there are two ways in which we can call a function. First is called call by value, and second is called call by reference. So, or call by address. So call by value means the value of the actual parameter is copied in the formal parameter. Okay. So when you copy the value of actual parameter in the formal parameter, it is called call by value. Okay. Like in the previously discussed cases so far. Yes. Manoj has asked a question, is actual parameters are also called arguments? You are right. Yes. In most of the books, actual parameters are called arguments. Okay, but I prefer to use actual word every time so that students do not get confused. So it is always good to say actual arguments, actual parameters instead of simply calling arguments. Otherwise, it will be a chaos for the some student, okay, who is new to these terms. Okay, later on you can say that actual parameters we can call them as arguments when you are acquainted with these terms. But for beginners, I always prefer to use the term actual. And in books also, actual parameters or actual argument is written. Okay. Okay, anyways. So call by value. So in call by value, we copy the values. So if we copy something, the original remains original and the copy remains copy. So if you are copying something, let's say you make a photocopy of some page, and if you edit the copy, does it mean that the like original is also changed? For example, you have a document. Okay, you go to the photocopier, ask him to photocopy this document, and then it generates a copy of this document. So if you make any changes in this document, will it automatically change this original document? Will it change the original document if it make changes to the copy of the document? Let's say you cancelled one line here or you erased one line here. Does it will reflect in the original document also? What's your answer? No one is answering. Okay, no, yes, because it's a copy. So if you alter one memory location, so if you are making a copy, it means that two different pages are used. So pages here means memory location. Okay, so memory locations are different. So if you are making change in one memory location, will it reflect in another memory location? If you are making a change in one memory location and incidentally both have the same value, will the change reflect in other memory location also? No. Again, the answer is no. So it means that since it is a copy, there are two different memory locations. And since there are two different memory locations, making change in the memory location having the copy will not reflect in the memory location bearing the original value. So it is not a permanent change. It's not a permanent change. Okay, if you print the original value again, it will not reflect the function call. So function call will not reflect. Okay, so see here in case of call by value, actual parameter is used in the function call, whereas formal parameter is the argument which is used in the function definition. So in call by value, different memory is allocated for both actual and formal parameters. So here this is actual and this is formal. So actual you are copying to formal. So formal is the copy and actual is the original value. So if you again print the actual value, you will find that nothing has been done because change is temporary. Okay, the change is temporary, right? So call by value. So let's see an example here of swapping two numbers. So inside the so before the main function, we have declared the prototype of the function. It is void swap int int. So these are the parameter list and this is the return value. Okay. So here what we are doing is we have declared two variables and before swapping the value of a is 10 and b is 20. Okay. Then we call this function swap. Okay. Then we call this function swap. And after swapping, we are again printing value of a and value of b. Now, what is swap doing? swap is doing this thing. Means it is trying to interchange value of A and B. How do you swap? You create a temporary variable. Here 10 and 20 is passed. 10 temp becomes 10. Okay. A becomes now 20 and B becomes 10. So here you will print A and B. So here it will print 20 and here it will print 10. But when you again print it in the previous slide, if you print it in the previous slide, what will you find here? You go back here. It will still be 10 and 20. It will still be 10 and 20 because it has not changed the original actual parameter. It has only made change in the formal parameter. So it is a temporary change. So when you will swap the function in the main again, when you will print the swap for swapped values of A and B, again it will not reflect. Okay. In case of call by reference, what is reference? Reference means address. So here you are not making copy. Here you are passing the address of the variable. So if you are passing the address of the variable, actual argument in the parameter, then you are not making copy. You are making the change in the same page. So if you don't copy and if you are editing the same page, then change will reflect, change will be permanent. So here again, same thing, but here we are using pointers. So pointers can store addresses. Pointers are variables which store addresses. Okay, so how do you refer to an address of a variable? By writing ampersand A and ampersand B. Ampersand A is address of variable A and ampersand B is address of variable B. So here we are passing address of the variables rather than making a copy. So here we are passing the address of the variable A and B as arguments. Since the argument type was pointers, so in pointers we are passing addresses. So here we are printing before swapping and after swapping in like this. So here it will print 10 and 20. There is no problem. But when we are swapping the addresses, not the values. Okay. So we are swapping the addresses. So here asterisk of A. So see what happens. Ampersand A and ampersand B get stored as pointer variables. Okay. So ampersand A and ampersand B get stored as pointer variables. So now here this pointer A is having address of A and B is having address of B. So when you put pointers, when you swap using pointers, what happens? This pointer dereferencing operator and address of operator get cancelled. So when we write pointer A, this asterisk A, it means value of A. And when we write asterisk of B, it means value of B. Okay, so here temp variable is assigned as value of A, which is 10. Same thing. So here value of A is value of B and value of B is temp. So the change is permanent because we are passing addresses here. Okay, so since we are passing the address of these values, uh, the change is permanent. Right. So the difference between call by value and call by reference is that copy of the value is passed in the function, whereas call by reference is in the address of the value is passed. Changes made is limited to the function. Call by reference changes made in the function as well as outside the function. Actual and formal arguments are created at different memory location, but in call by reference, actual and formal arguments are in the same memory location. But because one is referencing to the address of another. Library functions, we have already seen it is necessary to include libraries like conio.h, connection in console and output input. Okay, like getch. stdio.h we have been using. stdlib we will use functions for exit, calloc, malloc, other library functions. String.h uses library function for string related operations like putS, getS. Time.h contains timestamp related functions. Math.h contains mathematical functions like power. Okay, there are many other libraries which we can use in C. Okay, so here we have discussed different parts of function. Recursion is due, so we will do recursion in the next session. But till now, we have understood about functions in C language, usages, definitions, types, return values, arguments, library functions, and advantages of functions. Okay, so let me ask you a few questions for the sake of revision. Many students are asking about the weightage. It will be clarified. I don't have the weightage. So many chapters are left. Which chapters are left? I mean, I have been discussing, this is the 10th unit and pointers is left. Okay. So pointers I will teach in the next session. Strings I will teach in the next session. Okay. And then we have got our like other topics like structure, union, that also will be dealt. So we have got two lectures. I will wrap up the syllabus. So weightage criteria is not with me. You can ask the faculty from learning management. Uh, Discussion forums. Okay, I will have a word with them, see what is the response. Okay. I will have a word with them at least. Okay, so I will ask some review questions. Okay. So what is the difference between user-defined functions and library functions? Okay, thank you.